Good evening, everybody. My name is Fesse Longe, and I am your host this evening for the Black Doctoral Network's weekly web series entitled Conversation Starters. In today's web series, we're going to be talking about exemplars of Black fatherhood. And within this concept, we have a panel of some guest speakers, guest experts that will provide an open discussion with regard to this actual phenomenon of Black fatherhood, highlighting the positive images and the positive concepts associated with Black fatherhood. So, to the way the panel will work, I will go ahead and introduce each of our panelists, providing you with a little bit of information about them, and they will all pop up on the screen, and then we'll move forward to asking a variety of questions just so we can get some of their feedback and how they actually will conceptualize this phenomenon of Black fatherhood. So, to start, we have Dr. Alan Holliday, who is an attorney who's associated with the 100 Black Men of DeKalb County. He received his doctorate of education. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Alan Holliday. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Our second panelist that we have is Dr. Willie Cobb, who is actually a hospital chaplain. He's also a guest lecturer in the School of Social Work at the University of Chicago, and he has his doctorate in ministry. Thank you, Dr. Willie Cobb. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Trying to get this camera right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
All righty. And our third panelist this evening is Dr. Sean Brown, who has his doctorate in urban education, currently a high school principal with the New York City Department of Education. And I thank you again for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
Hey, how's everybody doing? Good to be here. Thank you.
All right. So we have our audience here. We're live. This is a beautiful Friday to have this conversation of exemplars of Black fatherhood. And I want to go ahead and get things rolling by, just starting off with, our first question that we have here. And we want to keep this as honest and genuine conversation about Black fatherhood. So first and foremost, my question is, what is for each of you, your relationship with your father, and how did that shape you? We'll go ahead and start with Dr. Alan Holliday.
Okay, sure. So my relationship with my biological dad wasn't that great. He left when I was about 6 years old. So we really didn't build a bond. But I was blessed. I had a stepdad who stepped in, and he made sure I knew had all the tools to be a young man. So those tools were basically, I learned athletics from him. I learned about sports. I learned about trusting faith. I learned, how to be good to a woman. I learned all those things from him. So, but he was basically the quarterback of our family, so to speak. So I was blessed to have someone, a surrogate, to step up, a stepdad like him, who basically was my dad. He really was my father, biological or not, but he raised me.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Dr. Brown, what about you? Don't think we can hear you.
I'm sorry. I grew up in a single parent household in Brooklyn, Brownsville, housing projects. My father was in prison when I was at the age of 3. And most of my relationship that I have with my dad is because of my mom. And the reason that I say that is because she never spoke negatively about him. And on my trips to see him, wherever he was in prison, she'd always say, "You'll have your chance to get to know him on your own." And that gave space for us to build our own authentic relationship and not to embitter me towards my father. So I would say that my mother is the reason that I have a relationship with my dad today. And our relationship has always been great. Through his letters, he taught me the importance of penmanship and writing well and art. And even when he'd send me $20, he'd let me know that he worked for 50 cents an hour just to get that to me. So I learned about finances from behind bars from my father.
Wow.
And so it just taught me a lot about who I needed to be. And the biggest thing that he did for me was when I was in the streets trying to be uh, part of gangs and things like that, he told me that he would want nothing more but for me not to follow in his footsteps. So our relationship is solid, and it's because my mother gave us that space, and she didn't place her biased feelings about him on me. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. What about you, Dr. Cobb?
My father unfortunately passed away when I was 6, but we had a tremendous relationship those few years. And he was larger than life. He was a force to be reckoned with. And everybody in the community knew him, and everybody said I was exactly like him. And one of the greatest things he gave me was his name. So my name, Willie Cobb, goes all the way back to at least 1847, where there was a slave who was sold to Atlanta whose name was Willie Cobb. And ever since that name, somebody in the family, a male in the family, was named Willie Cobb. And my father passed on that type of commitment, even at a young age, to me, because he was my best friend up until the moment he died.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It sounds to me that in how you all have described just that first question, there seems to be a theme of a positive influence of a male figure, that someone that was able to provide you all with guidance to a certain extent and just the basic knowledge for what it is to be an African American male.
Mm-hmm.
So, to furthermore dig deeper into that question, the second question that I have is, how would you all really conceptualize this phenomenon of Black fatherhood? We know that there is a narrative that has been perpetuated within society of Black fathers being absent and things of that nature. But how would you all conceptualize it from your lens, from your perspective? I can start with Dr. Brown.
Oh, okay. So this is a long answer because I had some time to think about it. When I think about the concept of Black fatherhood, I have to frame it in my personal theoretical framework, which revolves around the ecological systems theory, critical race theory, and also intersectionality. And when I look at these different theories, I think about the ways in which Black children are developed in society, within a smaller community out to a larger community. I look at race and how race influences the way that we parent our children. I also look at intersectionality because I think there's a different way that fathers interact with their female children and their male children. And when I think about Black fatherhood, for me, what it means to me is unlearning, relearning, and creating something new. Because there's a lot of toxicity in the way that we've been taught to be Black men and to be fathers. What it means to be strong, what it means to be masculine, is very toxic because it was based on a narrative that is not who we are as Black men. I also think about the importance of Black fathers reflecting on their experiences and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they're not carrying baggage or undealt with issues that they haven't really addressed in their own childhood into their parenting. And what I mean by that is, I can give an example. You know, I grew up in the housing projects, and if there was a problem, the way that you fix that conflict is that you fight. That's a very different experience from my son, and he had a conflict, and the immediate thing I told him was that you need to fight someone. That's how you fix it. And he corrected me, and he said, "Listen, dude, this is not the '90s, and this is not a music video. We don't have to fight. I can just not be his friend. How about that?" And it was humbling because there's certain things that we learn that we have to unlearn. With the way that we treat our wives, the way that we treat our families, we can't assume that what we've been taught in this American educational system about manliness or being a father is correct. So, in terms of my conceptualization of being a father, it's looking at everything we've been exposed to and questioning it and thinking about what was taken away from us when we were placed in slavery as a people, and trying to go back to that way of parenting. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Holliday. You have a response or your conceptualization of
No, I
Black
think,
Fatherhood?
yeah, I definitely do. But I just want to tell him that I loved what he just said. But I'm gonna take it a different way, a different angle. How I conceptualize parenting is different for different people. What I wish, and since he brought up slavery, I wish that the strong bonds and things that kept us together were still transferred down to today's kids, to today's fathers. Today's fathers, who I love to work with, they have no idea about the '70s, the late '70s, the early '80s dads and families. They have no idea about those strong men that came into it, who came home every day, worked hard, may have not been in the house for 8 hours, but they got up early. They made sure their kids knew who they were. They forget those strong relationships, those strong bonds. How I conceptualize it, like I said, is different for everybody. Being a father, a Black father, is different for everybody. There's some Black fathers who feel like if I pay, give a little money, hey, that's good enough. I did my job. There's some fathers who like to go out there and don't have the money, but have the resources, as far as they like to give hugs, they like to go to the park. So for me, I conceptualize in so many different ways, but my favorite way of doing it is by allowing fathers to remember where we come from, the foundation of strong Black men who were, like you mentioned, who were slaves, even prior to slavery, who were kings, and how they raised their villages. We forget that, and we forget also that the things that we're going through today in today's society, that's creating the new type of Black African American father, is we have to keep in mind our history and how important it is that we remember the strengths that we have when we're building our families. And so I conceptualize it as far as it being strong mentoring, wanting to get to know my child, spending time with my child, and educating my child.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Dr. Cobb.
It's a father's job to take into account the child's social trajectory, his lifelong trajectory. So to take into account the sociology, psychology, theology, and spirituality of a child's life. To look at all of these different aspects and see how a father plugs into every single, each one of those aspects of a child's life. To remember that the father is the leader in the sense that the father teaches his child confidence, spirituality, and the father, if they're so inclined, to know that this is a prophetic thing, it comes from God, that they have to have other people around them to help them to be the best fathers they can be. So it's not a father's job to look at the short term. It's a father's job to look at a child's life and see not where they are now, but where they are going to be when I'm not here. And so to leave a lifelong legacy for their child, so their child can have the confidence to conquer the world. And once we have what's called attachment, proper attachment with our fathers, there is nothing on the face of the earth a child can't accomplish. So we need to have strong attachments with our children and let our children know we will move mountains for them, knock down buildings, and love them no matter what.
Wow. That was very powerful. All of you all's answers were very powerful. I think it's important to highlight that each of you have conceptualized this phenomenon of Black fatherhood very differently, but with the theme of, it sounds, to really look into the historical aspects of it, like you've said, Dr. Holliday, and going also with Dr. Brown, looking into the idea of unlearning certain things that have been historically embedded in us, historically put out there by the current paradigm that we are actually in. And with Dr. Cobb, to reiterate, to enhancing the father's presence within, like you said, every aspect of that child's life, and spirituality, psychology, theology, all aspects that are very, very important. But I really like that, the fact that it's not the same for everyone. So, and which is important with any type of phenomenon, especially Black fatherhood. So the next question that I have is, How does the portrayal of Black fathers in society impact the way that we grow and we see ourselves? We can start with Dr. Cobb with that.
That is an extremely powerful question because for most of society, the concepts are a lie. We've been lied to not just since slavery, since enslavement began in the 1400s. So the whole themes around Black fathers are simply a lie, and they were established so somebody can take up the time and effort for their profit from Black families. It was all about the destruction of Black families. So we need to rewrite the lies that society has told. Those lies that were truly ingrained and embedded by the Nixon administration, who put into laws, into rules that if there's a Black man in the house, you don't get any subsidies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to remember that society has set out to destroy the Black father so it can dominate the Black woman. And that's our goal, to rewrite the lies that society has set forth to destroy. Everything we know about Black fathers that's written in the media, everything we know is simply a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So what we know for sure is Black men spend more time with their children than every other father combined.
Mhm.
We know that Black men, even though they may not be married to the mother, don't leave their children.
Right.
So everything we know is a lie, and we have to begin with an army of people to fight those lies.
Definitely. Definitely. We have a lot of the viewers actually agreeing with that point, which is great. Dr. Brown, what are your thoughts with regard to that?
Yeah, I agree totally. I think that statistically speaking, in any race, there's a curve, there's a natural curve, and what we have to understand is that in every race, in every culture, there's fathers that do what they need to do, and there's fathers that don't. And
right.
a lot of times, the fathers that are not doing what they're supposed to do for their children and so on and so forth, that's what's placed out in the media as much as possible. And that's a form of propaganda. It's done purposely to create a narrative to justify the way that we're treated, right? So in order to develop that cognitive dissonance and harm this person
Mhm.
or do wrong to this person, I have to create the idea that this person is evil and violent and irresponsible to justify what I'm doing. And it's a book by Noam Chomsky. It's called Propaganda and the Spectacular Achievements of Propaganda. It was written in 1994. And it talks about the way that we're portrayed in media to justify the way that we're treated by others. I think also we have to be smart enough to disengage with some of the things that we're watching on a regular basis as a
That's right.
people.
Mhm.
If you're looking at Love and Hip Hop and Real Housewives or whoever, and this is what you're feeding yourself and your spirit day in and day out, it's very difficult to see Black men in a different light.
Mhm.
Also, if you only look at Black men playing sports, for example, and Black men that are doing different things, you have to understand that it now informs the way that you see Black men. It's now difficult to respect an educated Black man father that's doing the right thing because you've conditioned yourself to see it in one particular light. So I think that's a part of it too, that sometimes we engage too much in things that we shouldn't be, especially on social media and in television. So that's my advice, is to be balanced in how and what you look at in terms of Black men.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Holliday.
I just want to say, Dr. Cobb, what he said was, I love what he started off with. One of the things I wrote about is the census during the Nixon era, and how they would go to house and determine whether or not a father was there or not. And they would automatically assume that a father was never around, or they wouldn't give funds to that family based off of those consensus data. And for me, I always talk about this with a lot of friends, which is, and I'm going to piggyback off the last speaker, which is a lot of times marriages end in divorce. 50%, let's say 50%. It's not just Black marriages, there's white marriages too.
Mm.
So you gotta realize the statistics that go out there about us is that we're all deadbeats and that we don't take care of our kids, or we can't run a household, or we can't stay in the household. But no
Mm-hmm.
one talks about the other side of the data. What about the other ethnicities that get divorced and are not home? Are we the only ones that do that? No, we're not. We're not the only ones. So I would like to clear that up. But I also, one thing I always think is great too is and this is not going against the other speaker, but we have to be true to ourselves as well and take accountability for our actions. So if we kind of feed into propaganda, which we do on a lot of issues, then we're at fault as well. We got to know our own strengths as Black men and Black fathers.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the media, sure, there's things out there about the media, about us through the media that aren't positive. But the real thing is, how do we go about filtering that information
Mm-hmm.
and determining what's real and what's fake? But I think you can still enjoy loving hip hop. I'm gonna tell you, I'm a fan. You can still loving hip hop. But the thing is, I don't take that home and I don't feed that to my children.
Right.
And that's something that's important. So you got to take accountability as a father and as a parent, what you're feeding your babies. So that's on us as well.
May I respond a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not to say anything against you, but the
Sure.
problem is, while we have tremendous responsibility and Black fathers have stepped up with this responsibility, the problem, and what our other doctor is saying, is that there are others in society who see these images as well. And then they perceive us through these images that other people see. So while we're trying to challenge the narrative, we have to deal with the stereotypes that the media puts out there, not only from the Black community, but from all the communities who believe that the worst father in America is the Black father, the narratives that they get from the media. So we can do everything we can to educate ourselves, but then we have to go out and educate the rest of society, because they do see these negative images, and it's not just the Black community they impact.
Thank you for your response. It's actually interesting that you started talking about the media, because that's actually the next question that I do have, which is, like you all have segued into a little bit. Currently, culture and society perpetuates the idea that Black fathers don't exist. But do you all think that this is exacerbated by the media? So from Dr. Cobb's response, it sounds like the media does play a role definitely in putting out those images, that how people actually perceive the Black fatherhood in itself. So Dr. Brown, do you think that media, like you said earlier, has a lot to do with the perception of Black fatherhood?
Yeah, I think that it's purposeful and there's financing behind it and it's intentional. If you look at your newscasts, if you look at newspapers, or if you look at social media, it's okay to portray Black men in this violent, aggressive way. If you look at the recent shootings, for example, you'll have a person who literally killed people, for no reason. And they'll talk about some of his better attributes, that he served his community in some way. And then you have a Black person who was arrested for getting into a fist fight or whatever it is. And then the imaging alone is very different. And it sells, right? This is why it's happening, because it's entertaining to see this type of aggression from Black men. Case in point, there's so many wise and intelligent Black folks in media that's not able to get their own television show, because a lot of their messages are just positive. And it's, I love my wife and I love my children. That doesn't sell. That's not going to get you a television contract. What's going to sell is, who are you fighting? Who are you going to hit? Who are you going to curse out? Is there another relationship involved? Because they like that theme. So my point is that, yes, and I agree with Dr. Holliday that we need to be smart enough to look at it and enjoy it for entertainment and place it in that box. This is entertainment. This is not real life. But also, it's flooding too many areas of our lives where it's hard to even protect your children from seeing these things you try. Like, I try to filter as much as I can, but it's there. It's in their faces all the time. So it happens, and I think it's important for us who are in the world of academia, who are educated in this way, to use platforms like this to help some of our brothers and sisters who may not be able to really see what's really happening in front of them. So,
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Cobb, you have a response?
The problem with the media is that too many of us listen and believe what they're saying. The second problem with the media is they have zero history of showing the Black community in any positive way whatsoever. And the fact that we trust them at all has been a detriment to the success of Black fathers in the Black community. The media plays a tremendous role in how we are seen and portrayed, and how others then use their bias against us because they believe Black men are so awful all the time. For example, there was someone who got up at one of the conventions recently and who said that it's okay for the police to profile her Black son because Black men commit more crime. And when we have to deal with that type of stereotype from a white person who's raising a Black child, then we have a long way to go. So it has to be our job to challenge the media. And we do that by putting forth positive role models in the media. I have a list of 100 movies people should watch, and the first 6 are filled with Black fathers trying to raise their kids. And these are the things that we have to do to stop this violence. It's violence against the Black family, and we have to put a stop to it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Holliday?
I'm just going to follow my colleagues. I mean, I agree 100%. The media, just mentioning a few things when I was younger, just even the O.J. Simpson trial, the Time magazine picture of him, how they darkened his face. And we were all, we were all basically looked at differently from that, So I think, for a lot of us, the media has been something that has always been there for us. I always think about my research work, academic self-concept, the way my children view themselves as students, how they go into a classroom, do they feel they could go against any ethnicity? A lot of times the media portrays young Black boys as not that smart, not that great in math, not that great in writing. We're focused on the wrong things. So, I go against that a lot. I went against it as a kid. I might make sure my kids fight against that. They know that their abilities, they know what they're able to accomplish. And the media doesn't know, even if it's a comedy, they buffoon us so much in comedies,
That's
that it's really, even though it's funny, but it really isn't funny, and I look at commercials too. I mean, half the commercials, and listen, this is nothing against anyone who dates outside their race, but half the commercials, there's no prominent Black man. It's always a Black woman, and she's either with a white guy or a Hispanic guy. And there's no Black male really in commercials where you see, if it's a laundry commercial or if it's a drive-in going to a restaurant commercial, the mother's alone. The mother's by herself, and that's not accurate. That's not accurate. And I dislike that portrayal. And like you said, you can't protect your babies from it. You really can't protect your babies from seeing that. So right. I agree 100%.
Yeah, definitely. You all brought up some very excellent points. Sounds like you all agree that the imagery that is put out there for the media has, been some destructive in how society perceives Black fathers. With that being said, with their goal of having some type of economic or social gain behind the scenes when they're putting out these images of Black fathers. So definitely that is correct. So the next question that I have, which goes a bit along with what we've been talking about and how we are actually conceptualizing Black fatherhood, is: do you all think that Black culture supports or does not support the narrative that Black fathers don't exist? I can start with Dr. Cobb for that question.
That is a fantastic question.
Yes.
Because not only does the culture believe the narrative, the culture perpetuates the narrative.
Mm.
And it has done so since the myth about Black fathers in slavery. This myth literally comes out of slavery, where they believe that because Black fathers were prostituted from one slave plantation to the next, Black men don't know how to be faithful.
Mm.
And it's been a concerted effort to teach people this myth. And so Black people grow up believing that Black fathers don't know how to be faithful to both their families and their children, so their women and their children. A myth that is created and we have historical facts about this, so white supremacists can do their best to dominate Black women. And so they want to destroy this. And what they've done is psychologically ingrained in the Black community this belief that Black men are less than. Once again, all of it is an absolute lie. And this is why Black men, Black fathers are excellent, because we have defied that myth for the last 250 years. We have done everything. Let's take for a fact, after slavery, Black men would walk 150 miles to go and find their children. We know for a fact that Black fathers, like the doctor said, Black fathers who are behind jail will still keep a relationship with their children. The problem is we have been brainwashed to believe inside of our own culture that we are less than. We have to rewash those brains.
Okay. So, Dr. Holliday, do you agree?
I agree 100%. I think, well, I'm going to add a little twist again. I think Black culture definitely in some areas, I just wish we would stop using the word all and then make sure we use the word some. Because some fathers don't do it. Some fathers don't step up. Now, do all fathers? No. I mean, that's, I love thinking about the strong men that I know, the brothers that I know who go through any length to make sure they're there for their children. And there's tons of us doing it. There's tons of us doing it. There's tons of us doing things that the media is never going to show us. And that's why in the first question I said, you know yourself, like the best advice I've ever gotten was just be a father. Don't worry about anything else. Clear everything else out, clear all the noise out, be a dad, do your job as a father, the rest will come. And with that said, I mean, you control what you're doing, but the media, like I said, the media, that's a different animal. But I think, yeah, we do perpetuate that line that, Black fathers don't exist 100%. So I agree.
And Dr. Brown.
Yeah, I think that I might get in trouble now because I'm gonna say some things that I need to say. Because there's Black folks in the room. I think that sometimes we perpetuate that towards one another. And a lot of times when married couples get into conflicts with one another, things are said to children about their fathers that should never be said.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm a high school principal, and I do a lot of parent counseling. And the things that are said in front of me to children about their fathers is destructive. It is absolutely disgusting. And the reason that I'm so aggressive about it is because I had a father that was in prison, and my mother never spoke negatively about him to me, not once. So young Black children grow up despising and hating their fathers, not knowing why the father really left, not fully understanding what took place. I have friends that I counsel that are trying to be good fathers that are not allowed to engage with their children because of an issue that they have with their former spouse or girlfriend or whatever it is. So if we're being 100% honest, a lot of times we perpetuate that narrative. The other issue is that in terms of Black culture, Black fathers that are doing well sometimes struggle to reach out to that other Black father that's doing well.
Absolutely.
Because there's an arrogance in what we're doing. So what happens is, you go from being in a lower class environment, or you make a little bit of money, or you get a little success, and you leave your culture behind, and you leave your people behind. And we do that sometimes as Black fathers. So kind of like what Dr. Holloway was saying. I'm all about accountability as well, right? So the truth is that it is perpetuated from people from the outside, but also from the inside, we have developed certain characteristics that we've been conditioned to believe. A great book that I think everyone should take a read when you get the chance is Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGroy. And reading that changed the way I interacted with my brothers and sisters and the way we spoke about different things. So, and the perfect example of what solidarity means is, and I have to bring this up. If you look at what the white community is doing behind Donald Trump, I can almost guarantee you that a lot of them do not agree with who he is, but they put their race before anything else. And I think for us as people, we've got to get to that place of solidarity where I don't agree with Dr. Cobb about something, and I don't agree with Dr. Holiday about something, but I will support him as my brother.
Right.
So those are my thing. And also, last thing is we have to have realistic expectations of what it means to be a great father. There's some guys that are great fathers, but they're not necessarily great partners to their wives, and that's the truth.
Right.
They need training. They need help. And for those guys that are able to just be good fathers and they're not necessarily great at everything, why don't we celebrate that and let's uplift that part? Because they can bring something to the table.
Definitely. Seems though we have a lot of comments going on here from a lot of our audience members. I think we may have an audience question that is actually coming in that we would like to get your feedback on, just to see what you all think about this. So from Mr. Curry, he said, excellent points, but what do you say about contemporary race gender theory? I'm thinking about the works of bell hooks that make the same argument about Black men being absentee fathers. Dr. Cobb, would you like to answer that?
Once again, we have fallen into the stereotype that society wants us to fall into. It is easy to look at what we believe to be the truth, and it takes us Black men to go out and get on the ground and do the research. And when we sit on the ground and do the real research, we see that Black men are fighting to stay in their children's lives. And so sometimes the intelligent elite in the Black community, as Booker T. Washington once called it, the talented 10, are simply just wrong. And so, like the doctor just said, sometimes we find ourselves at a place where we separate ourselves from the rest of the community and we buy into the stereotype. In my research, I talked to someone who said that her mother and father were divorced, and her mother would not let her father see her. He would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, meet her outside of her house, walk her to school, be at school at 3:30, and walk her home every single day of her life. This is the fight that Black fathers go through all the time. And then we have to go through the stereotypes that even come from the Black community. Yes, here is a fact that belies all of that. What we simply know is, because so many Black men are not married, they look at that as Black men being absent. And the research shows that Black men never divorce their children. And when white and Latino fathers divorce the family, they divorce the children as well. And that creates resentment from the children. So we have a large number of Black children who don't resent their fathers because their fathers stay in their lives. We have to challenge the intellectual elite to make sure they haven't bought into the stereotypes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Dr. Holiday.
I agree with Dr. Cobb. Just one thing I want to add to it, which Dr. Brown mentioned, and I loved it, man. We as brothers have to pull up each other. And I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this in my younger years, sometimes we feel as if we're too good. We're at such a plateau. I don't want to share with my younger brother. He has to work as hard as I do to get to this point kind of mentality. And I was just having this conversation yesterday where a lot of the older guys will tell me, well, I'm gonna let him work as hard first on his own to get up, to climb up the ladder. And a lot of times it would be great. And I definitely have learned a lot, and I try to do this myself with a lot of my young brothers around me, is I try to share my failures. and I share my faults, and I share the things that I've done well as a father, and I share the battles I had to go through for my daughter. So I think how we really learn, and I'm telling you, Dr. Brown, I loved it, is we share amongst each other better. We open up ourselves. A lot of times as Black men, we're kind of closed with information, and we're closed about our emotions too. We don't want to share a lot of that emotional stuff that goes on in our life, the fights and the sadness and things of that nature. So, and just like Dr. Cobb said, what Dr. Bell was talking about there perpetuates a stereotype that is inaccurate. So I'm going to leave it with that.
Okay. Dr. Brown.
Yeah, I think Dr. Cobb hit it on the nail in terms of we got to start defining things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole absentee, you know what I don't understand? I don't understand why there's a way that quantitative data can be skewed and subjective.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we look at these different reports, if you really analyze the data and see like what population you're speaking to and what's the subcategories and what are the variables that's going against each other, then you'll see, oh, this is not true. So we walk away with these different beliefs, and just because it says it's an article, it's a report, we believe it's true. And that's where we have to sharpen ourselves as academics, as Black folks, where we question things. We go, wait a minute, where was that article? Who wrote it? When did it get written? Because we know that, even data can be racialized. And in terms of absentee fathers, I go to church, and I'm also a researcher, and I'm into data and everything else. I can't tell you the amount of Black men that, like Dr. Cobb said, they are trying. They want to be in their child's lives, but it comes with so much tax. It comes with so many different rules and regulations. All right, I want to see my child. Well, you got to see me, and you have to give me this amount of money, and we have to be best friends. No, don't want to be your friend. I just want to take care of my child. Because if you think about it, Black fathers, in terms of being with their children, they're smart. It's an investment. They understand this is an investment. I love my kids. But when it comes with all of these different rules and regulations, I have one brother, I'm not going to put his business out there. This brother is on the brink of getting arrested just because he wants to see his child. And he has to now sacrifice it. And I said, listen, man, you might need to let this go until your child's of age, because you're going to get arrested and this person is going to lie on you. So I feel like those narratives it's just not, it hasn't been my experience. And as a matter of fact, what I've noticed is, irregardless of economic status or educational background, and if you're in a circle with a bunch of Black guys and there's a guy that's not taking care of his child, more than likely those brothers are going to check him and ask him, what is that about? That's what I've experienced. I might be wrong, but that's been my experience. So,
well, thank you all for answering that question. Very, very wonderful points, and how you guys were able to really present that the narrative primarily is incorrect. All that has been put out there is incorrect, and it's up to Black men to really do their research. Like you said, Dr. Brown, what is this article really saying? Who is it written by? What is its purpose? What is it really trying to say about Black fatherhood? So going into the next question, we have here, with recent events of Black men such as Philando Castile and Jacob Blake being murdered and or shot by police on camera in front of their children and communities, what does the massacre of Black men do to our culture, and how does this impact fatherhood? Start with Dr. Holliday.
Well, I thought about this question. I have two parts to it for me. We've been, as Blacks in this country, we've been through so much, and we've seen so much. I think that, it's horrible what we're able to videotape now with the phone, but this has been going on for centuries. I'm gonna say this massacre has been happening for centuries. We've been getting massacred for centuries. The Black man has been taken out of the household. That was the number one. We were public enemy for a long time, and so does it change Black fatherhood? No, I don't think it changes Black fatherhood, because we're strong enough to know what we have to do and what our mission is and what it has always been. We're always going to be Black fathers. Just no matter what they try to do, how they try to tear us down, that's what we're always going to be, no matter what. Now, what it does do, however, it does impact, like Dr. Cobb stated earlier, it does impact the way society views us and how they treat us, which it has done considerably, as you've seen through the recent uprisings in the police brutality. They treat us totally as opposed to as opposed to it being underhanded. Now it's in your face. So you'll see it readily with the president we have now sitting and giving the charge to do it to us on a daily basis. You'll see it in our face. So it's never going to change how Black fathers parent. We're strong enough. We're going to stay being Black fathers. But how society views what we do, yes, that has changed.
Okay. Dr. Cobb.
The narrative that they have an impact on us is correct. But I want to talk about what happens, like the doctor just said, when a Black man says this far and no further. We have the example right now in Kenosha, Wisconsin. If you have not seen that young man's father, you have missed who a Black father is.
Mm-hmm.
He has chewed up the media and he has straightened them out. Every time he has been on television, if you haven't seen it, you need to go back and look at it. This is a father who said, I am not taking this anymore. I want real change. So the question has to be, how do we begin to demand that they do it better and they rewrite history? He's telling them how to do it. Because not only will they tell us what we are like, they will force it down our throats. And when he gets on the news, he rejects all of that in his own narrative, in his own Black voice. And he says, I am a Black man, a Black father, and you are going to listen to me. You harmed my son. I want proper retribution. Why this is different? Because if we look at it, and please forgive me, sisters, if we look at it in the past, when a child got murdered, they talked about the mother.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the few times where a Black father has been in the media and he has stood his ground. And this is the narrative we need to put forth. Please look at every interview he's done and you'll see what needs to be done.
Thank you. Dr. Brown.
Yeah, I can speak about my own parenting. I think getting a visual to what's been happening, it's made me more intentional about the conversations I have with my son, and I've gone deeper into why he needs to be excellent as a student and why he needs to be wise about the people he spends time with, and why he needs to be careful about a bunch of different things. I've noticed that my children have become a little bit more afraid as they walk out and they're around their friends and everything else, of course, because of COVID as well. But I've been very careful to be more affectionate, more loving, more kind with my children, because I see that they are getting a little bit more nervous about going outside. So as a parent, if you ask what has the massacres of Black men being placed on television, what has it done to my parenting? It's just made me a little bit more attentive. But I'm not shocked by it at all. I think I've become desensitized growing up in New York City. I've become desensitized to violence to the point that what happens is that, and I don't know if the other brothers can speak to it, you stop fearing death. You stop fearing death and you just live every single day as if it's your last. And it makes you more passionate, and it makes you a little bit more focused as an academic, and it makes you want to give more to your community. That's what it's done for me, because I don't walk around wondering what if. A lot of times it's when. So being that desensitized, it gives me a sense of confidence and purpose, and making sure that my life counts every single day. So that's what it's done for me. And also, just to speak a little bit about not just as fathers, but I think for my wife, we've made a decision to recommit to one another a little bit more because of what's been happening in society. We realize that we need to be much more bonded than we have been in the past, and very intentional about how we raise our children.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Holliday. Dr. Brown brought up a very good point with regard to the desensitization. That's a very strong statement about actually not fearing death. What are your thoughts about that?
Being from New York, also, I don't know if I fear death now. I mean, I don't want to die, but uh, but no, you know what it is. He's absolutely right. I just know every time when I was younger, walking out the house, this could possibly happen to me. I grew up like that. I knew that there was a chance that I could possibly get run into a group of white guys and they would beat me up. Period. I knew that. I knew it was possible for a cop to pull me over for anything, and I could die that night. I knew that. I knew that was a possibility. Everyone in my neighborhood knew it. Everyone I grew up with, my uncles, everyone knows that. That's what blacks walk around feeling every day. Um, it's yeah, he's right. We're just desensitized towards it in that regard. Yeah, but that's our lives. That has always been our life. It's always been my father's life. It's been his father's before him, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cobb. What are your thoughts about that?
On Wednesday, my middle son, who is 21 and going to Emory for his master's in nursing, calls me and says, "Old man, where are you?" I said, "I'm in Kenosha, Wisconsin." And he says, "Dad?" I said, "I'm in Kenosha, and I will not allow anybody to have fear in my life. No cop, no man, no person. I go to the store in Kenosha. I live a half an hour from Kenosha. The tires are cheap. There are no taxes on food. I will not be taxed because there is racism. We cannot allow this ignorance to stop us from living. I will not do it." I shopped in Kenosha and I came back home to Chicago. And that's the way it's going to be. If we cow down, they win. We have to keep throwing our bodies at it until they get it right.
Wow. Thank you. That's very powerful, Dr. Cobb. Thank you for that statement. So we have just another question here, and as we have talked about society, we've talked about the media and how they have perpetuated this, negative narrative of Black fatherhood. So I want to transition a little bit into what can we do currently to create a more positive image of Black fathers. I can start with Dr. Brown.
I think we need to do more things like this. I think that we need to support Black businesses. I think that we need to find different ways to be united with one another, and just be careful not to make everything that we have with one another conflict and issue. Learn to resolve issues in a way that doesn't end in yelling and cursing. We don't need to spread our business on social media all of the time, every time that there's a problem. So I think that the more that we show solidarity and we're a little bit more private as a people about our issues or challenges or concerns, and we support one another, it helps. It helps. So I think unity is key.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Holliday, how about you?
I'm just gonna piggyback on Dr. Brown, man. He's saying the right stuff. Unity is key. I just want us, the older cats. I'm an older cat now. We need to, reach down and pull the young ones up. That's important. Just raise them up. Let them know our experiences, good or bad. But don't be afraid to show your emotions behind it and what you might have went through.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Cobb, what are your thoughts about positive imagery of Black fathers?
We need to spread love. We need to spread the love that a Black father can give. Because when a Black father loves, his children can conquer the world. We need to remind ourselves and our children that they are loved, and we are the ones that love them. Spread love.
Spread love. That's good. That I think all of you pretty much said primarily the same thing of unity, spreading love, and really demolishing what has been already put out there that they want society and individuals in society to believe. So Again, thank you all for your answers, the information that you have shared with our audience. That primarily concludes all the questions for this evening's series. So, just as before we leave, I just wanted to say again, thank you to the audience and thank you to our wonderful panelists here who have joined us this evening to
Thank
share
you.
the
Thank
knowledge
you.
with regard to Black fatherhood. I know you all have said some really powerful things, and I just want to, summarize a lot of what we've said so far that you guys have shared with the audience. Is that we need to look into the history books and understand that what they have presented, we need to rewrite that narrative because that narrative is incorrect. And unfortunately, that narrative, which is perpetuated by the media, has caused a lot of damage to society, to African American men, and how they're perceived as far as fatherhood. And we also need to make sure that there's an accountability as African American men in what we are putting out there and what we know to be true as well. And just knowing that, like you all said at the conclusion, unity, spreading love, and just being active. And see, we have a lot of our comments coming through that a lot of people agreeing that, for example, we need to promote ourselves and our own stories about to supporting one another, um, like our panel mentioned. But before we go, I'd like to have each of you all just tell us how some of the audience can get connected in case they have any questions or want to know more about the phenomenon of Black fatherhood, of how you all presented it. I can start with Dr. Cobb. How would you like people to get in contact with you?
2 places. I'm on LinkedIn to Willie Cobb, and my email is wcobb3033@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Brown, how about you?
Email Sean F. Brown at gmail.com. Sean F as in Frank Brown at gmail.com. And also SeanFBrown.com, educational consultants. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Holiday, how about you?
Sure. So Alon Holiday on Instagram, and Alon Holiday on LinkedIn, Alon Holiday on Facebook, and my email is dr.alonholiday@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for that. Again, thank you, audience, for joining. Again, thank you, panel, for all the information that you've shared this evening, enlightening us about the concept of Black fatherhood. For the audience members, if you want to hear more of this wonderful discussion on topics like this and more topics, please register for the Black Doctoral Network Conference at blackphdnetwork.org 2020 conference. It's going to be held from October 29th to the 31st. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you all for watching. Have a good evening.
Thank
Thank you very much. It was nice to meet you guys. That
All
was
right.
wonderful.
Thank you all.
Nice to meet
I
you too,
appreciate
brother.
it. Take care.